Yeah, it took a bit, but hey, we're doing it.
Well,
That's right.
sorry, guys. It took me a while.
That's all
Hey,
right.
no, we're thrilled. This is really cool. I love the X-wing in the background.
Oh yeah,
Perfect.
yeah.
That's amazing.
So someone,
Huh.
this guy called Kennerboy on Instagram. I think he makes models and
Mhm.
makes replicas, and basically he made a. I don't know if you can read, but
Oh, so you even got a little plaque.
yeah,
Yeah, red. That's red. Is that red 7?
it's Red 7. So basically, what he did is he got the colours from some of the Royal Navy aircraft,
Yeah.
and because Red 7's not. I think the X-wing is seen in the New Hope, but there's
Mhm.
a droid. There was a black droid that was
Oh
not
wow.
that wasn't sort of assigned to any of the call signs. So he was like, "Okay, I'm going to use that one, and that's going to be Red 7's droid." So the that black droid in A New Hope is now
Red Sevens.
obviously that's not official.
Oh, yes. That's headcanon. Yes, we're fine with that, though.
Yeah, yeah, it's kind
So,
of cool, that, isn't it?
yeah, I mean, I think one of the reasons I'm so drawn to the pilots in any of the films is you all seem like, I mean, pardon me, normal people that we would run into. You know, you're obviously not Harrison Ford, but Harrison Ford didn't fly for the Royal Navy either. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah,
but you're somebody that we could run into, and that's just, I think, the point of those scenes in the movies is that these were normal people
yeah,
fighting against oppression.
yeah. It's a really good point. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you get the feeling. It's kind of weird. I have to say, it's kind of weird because the so you sometimes find yourself talking about it as though you're actually immersed in the Star Wars world because the
Mhm.
sets are so realistic, especially in Rogue One. It was shot in such a way that was so realistic that the moment you were donning your uniform or your flight suit and you're in the Yavin base. I
Right.
mean, it just looked. I mean, your backdrop behind you. I mean, it just looked exactly as you would imagine. You felt like you were there because even like 2 stories up or 2 or 3 stories up where the camera's never going to go, the art department had made it so you had this moss growing on the damp walls of the base. I mean, you could go right up to it and swear that it was the actual thing. It was so realistic. So yeah, forgive me if I start talking about it in sort of real terms.
Right.
It's because it felt so realistic.
Right. And I imagine, Ben, too, like just being on the set of Rogue One. I mean, here at Brick City Blockade, we've talked to so many people who have been behind the scenes on Rogue One. We have our good friend Details, who was doing some screen capturing stuff. He was doing a lot
Yeah.
of behind the scenes work. I've talked with Ingvid Delia, who did, of course, Princess Leia at the end of the movie itself. And every single conversation, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this, is their interactions with Gareth Edwards, no matter how long they were on that fan level. That Gareth was just as much of a fan of this universe as anybody else there. It was really like a real fan experience for every member of this project. Am I correct in thinking that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you felt it. I think from the moment you understood that he didn't want, I mean, or this is my interpretation of the film, and it seemed that way through the process when I saw it, that, they just wanted it as realistic as possible. And whenever he could, he was just grabbing cameras and immersing himself in the action. The direct, and there's no right or wrong way for the directors to work. It's just how they work, and they have their own unique way of doing it. But he was very much on the filming of this was just getting involved in it. Because clearly he loved it, and they knew or we all knew from the start that was it. It was being filmed by a fan
Right.
himself, and it showed the whole process from, as I said, from the art department, and the costumes, the down to the minutest detail were absolutely as a fan would want it, and that's because I think he was driven that right from the start.
How did you find yourself in an X-wing cockpit? I mean, I'm assuming at some point you actually did film some of that, or at least around that. And how did that happen?
Yeah, there was a few. So they basically they've got an idea of what it is they're going to shoot in the films. Clearly, there's a lot of the visual effects and the special effects, visual effects side of things, where the scenes, they know how the scenes are going to play out with the aircraft or the spacecraft flying around, but they can do animation bits or computer bits where they have very rough aircraft flying around, and sometimes they need to see what the dialogue's going to be like or how it's going to work, and so they asked a few of us on set, who'd done acting prior, and a number of us stuck our hands up, who'd done roles of dialogue, etc., without really knowing what it is they were going to be doing. And they took some of us to one side and did these sort of mini small auditions. And a couple of us, me and Russell Ballard, in fact, who plays Raylo Sorrell. He's a stuntman and a friend of mine anyway. But we ended up jumping in a cockpit and being shot in various ways, doing some dialogue bits that the director was then kind of used to see how it would fit into the main film sequences and stuff. So that was one time in the cockpit, which was great, brilliant, doing some dialogue anyway and getting some direction and stuff. But then there were other scenes where we had to run and scramble and jump in the cockpits, and I had to run in one, and the canopy all came down. It's part of quite a big scene, actually. So that there's elements of that. There's some stuff in the background you can see for that, but obviously with films, so much gets shot and so much ends up on the cutting room floor, which you fully expect. But yeah, I mean, just being jumping in and out the cockpit, and we had a lot of the ground crew as well, who were kind of assisting and putting the ladders up and getting ready to take quite the chocks, because the thing doesn't necessarily roll in the same way, but they're putting the fuel in and all sorts of stuff, and it was very realistic, actually, from my experiences.
I wanted to ask, and I'm assuming you guys didn't speak about this, is the scene.
No.
And when you're standing behind Jyn Erso, and she's delivering what might be the most poignant speech in all of Star Wars.
Yeah.
That, I mean, to be behind and around actors of that caliber, creating a scene like that must have been pretty intense.
It was, yeah. And obviously it's well known that there were rewrites in the film, as there always are. This is, you read about it afterwards and people say, there's crisis on set, something else is being reshot. It's like, this is our film. It's not crisis on set. You do have rewrites, and you do reshoot things, and things don't quite work for some reason, or there's a dialogue change, or there's a little story twist and they have to change the dialogue. So it was shot a number of times, that scene, and each time it seemed to build in its intensity and its importance, actually. And and seeing the collection of some of the old faces from the films that we'd seen anyway, it was just like, wow, this just does feel like it's important. This feels crucial and critical, and a real pinch point, not for this film, but for all the films. As you said, it was just such a key speech. And credit to all the crew involved. It made it feel like it was like that. It made it felt that important. And the cast and Felicity was just amazing. She gave it just such intensity and importance to the role, and to those lines as well. Yeah, you knew that you were part of something when she was delivering those lines. It's like, you get the like goosebumps, or whatever you call them in the States, like chills. Yeah, it was superb to be part of that.
Speaking of big Hollywood actors, I had seen various still shots of people who are dressed up like Biggs and Porkins in your squadron in the movie. Were they on set? Were there people who were supposed to look like some of the original?
Yeah, it's funny you say that. And the film's gone past by enough now. It doesn't matter me, talking openly about it. But yeah, they were really keen on that kind of legacy actors, and they had a number of people picked out who would look similar, you know, who would look good, and there were some that looked really good, and they had the kit and the helmet, and they had all those helmets labeled up separately for these guys to make sure that, you know, the kit and the helmets were all going to be absolutely bang on. You know, they didn't want to be making mistakes on that front. So yeah, they were around. I know one of them. Yeah, one of them was actually an ex-Navy guy who didn't know that he was going to be pulled up. No, he was serving Navy at the time. He didn't know that that was what he was going to be asked to do.
Wow.
And so they whisked him off, hair and makeup, extra photos, and he came back, you know, with it all on. And we're like, whoa, it was actually Biggs. He was looking just like, yeah.
Was there a little jealousy? Because you already have the mustache.
Yeah, I only had I'm 6'5" or whatever, and you know, I said no. You know, they offered it to, but yeah. So there were those guys, but it was kind of obvious that they weren't going to make a big deal of it. It wasn't like they wanted to, you know, be parading this character or that character around. I think they were keen to give it a go, and if it worked, and if they looked right, they would probably use it and use the cuts and everything else. But I think in the final film, you're not really meant to see or meant to believe that there's any one of those of the background guys necessarily. But yeah, they would. I remember seeing they had you know, all the pictures of legacy guys up in the hair and makeup section. You know, they had Biggs, Porkins, and whoever, you know, all the others in there. But I think what they were keen on, though, was to fill in some of the other gaps of the pilots in A New Hope that you didn't see and didn't know. They wanted to give names and faces to some of the other people that you knew were characters, but we hadn't seen these guys or heard about them. So I think that was something that they wanted to do. They had mentioned it kind of early on. I remember that. So for some of us who suddenly appeared in because we didn't know, we were taken out and scanned, you know, for the full 360 scanning and the extra. They do extra super high def pictures of you in case you needed for anything else ever, CGI or otherwise. And you know, if anyone has used for things like the books, the visual guide, and there's a couple of other books that you sticker books and things, and you find yourself in. So they were doing hero shots of a bunch of us, and we knew that there was character elements involved, but we didn't know if you'd be in the film or if you'd be in, you know, appearing elsewhere until the visual guide came out, and that was when it was like, wow, okay, so they've like. It's like me and Russell and some of the other guys I know. It's just like, wow, they've given us call signs and names and like places in the canon of Star Wars. It's a big deal, you know.
I mean, I told my kids, I said, you know, I'm interviewing Red 7, and I said, Jack, do you remember the man who was standing behind Jyn Erso in the speech room? He's like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, and then it was fun because this continuity, we just interviewed Gold Leader, and
my boss, one of my bosses.
Yeah, and he was saying how great it was that the two films connected so solidly. You know,
yeah,
he had seen a cut where somebody had lopped the end off of Rogue One and put it on to the beginning of Star Wars: A New Hope, and that it was just so seamless. And I think for all of the film's success, I think that seamless nature and the ability to watch those two films back to back, almost as a 1A and 1B, is what makes it so special to me.
Yeah, totally. And again, you know, down to when I first got approached to help with some of the casting of the pilots and aircrew, obviously through my experience and advising, etc. When we were first involved, they were calling it period drama. You know, they said it's a period piece because it's not like 70s. We want everyone with tashes and looking ridiculous 70s, but they wanted that seamless nature so that everyone, you know, sideburns are slightly long. It's not the fact that it was made it was made back then, but it's out in the wherever it is in a galaxy far, far away. So, you know, the look and feel of it had to be of the kind of, it had to have a 70s kind of feel to it or taste to it. And that's part of that seamless thing. They wanted that interconnectivity. Some of the droids that are there in the background. I mean, the guys there that you didn't even see in the final film, there were droids from the first film that I guess some of the fans would know exactly, they'd spot them in books or whatever else. But, they're so keen to have this tie in. And then when we all saw it, when we went to watch it when it first screened in Leicester Square, and, there was a lot of us actually, some Navy guys, we all got suited and booted and went down there and, our dicky bows and with a few beers in, not having any clue what the film was going to be like, who's going to win it, if anyone was going to make the final cut or whatever. But just that last scene, I did just like anyone else, like you guys as well, I'm sure. How it segues in, it's just like, wow, these guys, they could not have done that any better. There's no two ways about it. If you'd have rewritten that and shot that 20 times over, you would not get a better kind of finale, segue into the, to mash us back into the universe that we all know.
I mean, Princess Leia was my first love, and so to finish the film, and I believe she had just passed.
Yeah.
And so to see Leia back, it was comforting in a way that was I was not expecting, but also that continuity of the, that there is hope, that things will get better, that you can watch something that's inspirational, that is a fantasy, and those things are, I think, very important, especially now when many of us don't have time to read books, and many of us are not having the ability to, for instance, when's the last time anyone sat down that to read Tolkien cover to cover? Yeah. But we can watch Star Wars, a couple hours after the kids go to bed, which is incredibly helpful when you're having a bad day. And and then of course we have the ability to see some of the shows that they do in between. Like you were on the Star Wars show, and was it you showing Pablo around, or was Pablo showing you around the set?
I was showing Pablo around. It was great because I'd met him. I've met him before. We did the little bit of interview and had a chat, and he was kind of interested in, the backstory, the flying and stuff. I didn't realize. I mean, I'd heard the name before, but I didn't realize that it's like, part of that story group that decided kind of everything, where all the ties go in and the threads. It's a difficult task, isn't it? Picking all the threads of this universe and trying to tie them all in together. And then we just had a really just fun chat. And then after we stopped, after the camera stopped rolling and whatever else, again, we just carried on chatting anyway about all things Star Wars. He's obviously knows his stuff. He's pretty into it all, which is great.